Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Seeds of Liberty podcast, episode 7. Unfortunately, our guest that we were going to have on was not able to make it. We will have that episode at a future date on homeschooling. So you can find us at iTunes, Stitcher, and on theseedsofliberty.com. So today we're going to talk about money, the beautiful world of dirty green paper notes, what people think as money. So we'll discuss money versus currency, quantitative easing, mandrake mechanism, and possibly delve into the Spike Gore-filled pit of the Federal Reserve that almost nobody seems to know anything about. However, it's written on the very paper that we transact with every single day. So it might be a good idea that you know what it is. So the way I like to talk about money when I discuss this with people is usually I take out a dollar bill and I try to explain, do you know what the words on this means, right? So you have, at the top of the Federal Reserve note, right? What does that mean? What is the Federal Reserve and what is a note, right? And, basically the Federal Reserve is it's a private corporation, but it's more fascistic in nature since it has complete inextricable ties to government, specifically the federal government, and it's owned by foreign international banksters that has the authority to print currency and enslave the future population, future generation for the benefit of the present generation. And then you have say again.
No, the point about the Federal Reserve, I've always wondered, and maybe you can answer this better. The reason that it's a fascist situation is because it is a private company or a private corporation. It's not a state-ran bank, right? Because if it was a state-ran central bank, it would be a communist.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah,
because the manifesto calls for Karl Marx called for a state-ran central bank, right?
Yeah. So
yes. I'm reading, if I'm thinking back correctly.
I think a lot of people say that they just say that it's a private. How do you say? Yeah, like it's a private corporation owned privately, but that's not true because if it's privately, it would be considered a free market, right? But it's not. It's the merger of corporate and state, right? It's fascistic in nature, and it's completely authorized, and it has complete immunity from what it does. By the federal government, yeah. So I know I talk about money versus currency. What's the difference between money and currency? Everybody confuses the two. And there's basically four characteristics that currency has, right? It's divisibility, fungibility, durability, and portability, and then the anything that's used as currency in history, for a long period of time had to have had those defining characteristics, right? And then money is fundamentally different because on top of those four characteristics, it is a store of value over a long period of time. And historically, only gold and silver has achieved that supreme status, right? Because it's been used for at least like 5,000 years and 2,000 years more heavily from the I believe is the Lydians in ancient Greece.
I think ammunition is creeping up there too as a currency.
Ammunition. Well, yeah. I mean, depending on where you are. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things that have been used as currency, like tobacco, salt, lumber, spices, sugar,
whiskey,
exotic bird feathers, beads, seashells, yeah. Various kinds of rocks, but they've come and gone due to various reasons, like because a currency has to have those things, and also it has to be sufficiently scarce and rare, right? Because if it's too widely available, it's basically worthless, right? So it has to be sufficiently scarce. So if you have seashells, you can't be living near the seashore, right? Transacting in seashells, you have a big wave, and all of a sudden everyone's savings are worthless, right?
So wake up in the morning, run to the bank. Just go to the beach. Everybody go to the beach.
Yeah, and even gold and silver is not necessarily immune to that phenomenon, right? Because if you have an asteroid that hits Earth full of gold and silver, hey, you have hyperinflation. Gold and silver is automatically overnight worthless, right? So it's not itself immune, but just for now, it seems like it's the best possible candidate for being money, So at this point, so what would you add anything to that, Jeremy?
Most people, like you said, they don't even realize, much less the difference between money and currency. They don't understand what the Federal Reserve is. Most people are relatively economically illiterate, actually. I know I was before I started going down this path a few years ago, because you grow up learning about money. What you're taught is, this here, this piece of paper is worth something. Well, how it gains that worth, you're never really told. You're just told that it's it's $1, it's worth $1, and you compare it to things you can purchase for that. And as a kid, you may get an allowance, or your parents may let you do a little odd jobs around the house to make a little money to go buy comic books or baseball cards or whatever the kids are actually doing these days. I'm thinking about back to my childhood. I don't know.
You're dating yourself.
I don't know if kids these days still do those things.
Buying 8 tracks,
But okay, I'm not that old. No.
Hey, I had baseball cards. I know what you're talking about. I'm not. I mean,
No, I wasn't referring to us when I said that. But
I had the Mark McGuire rookie card, man. Before he had a needle in every vein.
No, that was never proven.
Yeah, you're right. My bad. Sorry, Mark.
But
you're my hero.
So the point is, you're I'd say purposely not told what money actually is, or currency or any of that. You're just taught that this is the paper dollars that your parents give you or that you see other people have, that is important to some extent, and that gets you things. And most people never progress past that. That's what they were taught. They know that they can exchange it for certain things, and they know that the prices seem to go up on certain things as they get older. But a lot of people don't question why these things happen. All of that, of course, is tied to the Federal Reserve. And, as you were saying, it is, I think fascistic is the best term for it. I find, most people that will say it's, you were saying some people say it's private, it's private. Most people don't even realize what it is, but the ones who do, a lot of them who will argue with you that it's a private thing. That's not, the government is not involved in any way. Those are usually, I find a lot of progressives are like that. They just, because they're anti-corporation altogether.
It's
not for the same.
It's evil because it's private, basically, right?
Exactly. They're not against corporations for the reasons we are, or I hate to use the collective we, but the three of us, I know we're all pretty much in agreement that the only reason we're against corporations is because they're a state. They're a function of the state. They're a fiction, a legal fiction created by the state. That's the only reason we're against them on principle. But these people, like I said, a lot of them on the left, they're against private businesses in general. They think they're the most evil thing that could ever happen. The evil monopolies will take over and stuff like that. So they see
profit is evil.
Exactly. So they see the private nature of it, and they don't want to think past that. They just want to think, oh, evil private corporation. If they're against it, that's why. But they'll argue with you on the fascistic nature because, well, they like government. That's kind of what makes them progressives. They're pretty hardcore statists, and they're always wanting to use government in different ways to better their situation. But like I said, most people the majority of people don't even know what it is, or if they do, it's, that's where the money comes from. But like you were saying, I think you do a really good job of introducing people to that with, what you were saying with the dollar bill and everything, because you ask them and well, where do you go from there? Okay, well, where do they get that money? Oh, they print it. Most people will understand that. Although, we joke about it. They don't really print it. It's like all digital now. It's not like they have the printing presses going like they used. The actual printing presses like they used to, which makes it even scarier because now they can literally, with the touch of a button on a computer, can create millions upon millions and millions of dollars. And the average person thinks that, oh, that's a great thing. Like when the stimuluses came out and everybody was given free money from the government. Most people were ecstatic about that. I was still in my minarchist phase, but even I had to question. I think I only ended up cashing it because I was dead broke at the time and I had like car problems, but I actually considered just ripping it up and I didn't know why. It just struck me as weird that the government could just hand me money. But most people didn't even question that. They were like, ooh, free money, yay. That sort of ties back into our conversation last week about taxation. The same thing. You get a tax return, yay, free money. It was yours. Oh, never mind. But with the Fed and their printing, like I said, they print money, and people are like, yeah, it's great. They can keep printing money. And I think, Dave, you mentioned it last week about the one congressman or senator who was saying that it was a congressman, I think, right? That said that, we don't even need to tax people anymore. We can just print money. A lot of people think that. A lot of people think you can just print and print and print because they don't understand that the only thing.
I think he is speaking truth as long as the government is willing to enforce that and basically wipe off any government in the world that tries to trade oil outside of the petrodollar. So as long as the currency is propped up by oil, and the oil bearing nations or the nations that are buying and trading oil only trade in the dollar, I don't think it matters how many dollars there are, because oil is what runs the world right now, unfortunately. So I say that unfortunately. I mean, we can get into a different discussion about that, but it's one of those things where that is kind of a scary thought. I mean, if a congressman can basically just come out and say, hey, yeah, we don't need one tax dollar from anybody. We could just print and do whatever the hell we want. So it's like, okay, why am I paying my taxes? Why are we, what does the border matter? What does universal health care matter? If you can just print up money and pay doctors, then what the hell does it matter? And obviously there's some issues there, but,
some,
of course there's a ton, but the Federal Reserve.
So yeah, that's one way. The Federal Reserve it's a great way to describe money, because like I do hear a lot of people say, okay, you say, where does this come from? Okay, the government. All right, so they just make money? Yeah, they just make. So how does that work? Like, how does somebody just make money? Isn't that the same thing as counterfeiting? Well, no. Why? Because they have special ink and stamps. It's legal. And I think
because
people,
they passed the law.
Because they passed the law, right? Yeah, and like inflation, it's a great topic. People, I love to ask that people, what is inflation? And what's the first thing most people say is inflation is rising prices, right? I hear that all the time. Inflation is rising prices. And because that's all they see is the effect of it, right? And then I'm always correcting. That's a great introduction for a little economics lesson. No, inflation is not just rising prices. That's the distant effect. The beginning is mandrake mechanism or currency creation, or just creating money out of thin air, right? In the modern money mechanics, right? I think it was made by the Boston branch of the Federal Reserve, 1952, I believe. They state clearly that when a private citizen writes a check, he must have money in the bank to back up that check. When the Federal Reserve writes a check, it is creating money. He's stated in no uncertain terms, and yet nobody cares. Nobody cares at all. As if it's just.
Would you play Monopoly? What was that the other day? Would you play Monopoly if I got to write, basically say however much money I got, and you had to play by the rules?
Yeah.
Of course not.
If you were playing with somebody who can just create money for themselves, would you continue to play with them? And then another great way to visualize inflation. I think Milton Friedman said it's like it's not like you're pouring water into a bathtub and it just evenly disperses throughout the bathtub. No, inflation is like you take a dollop of honey and you just put it in a dish, and it just sticks there. And that's what happens. It goes to specific sectors of society, and it only spreads very slowly, ever so slowly. And so by the time the rest of us get it, the rest of the little people get it, prices already have gone way up, right? So we don't feel the benefits of that money, but the people who are given the money first, who are usually the special interest groups, big agriculture, big biotech, big banks, big oil, big energy, they are able to buy real things in the real market with this created fake money, right? And I think the statistic is like it's about 3% of the money in circulation is actually physical coins and bills. The rest of it is just electronic, things on a screen, which is kind of interesting too. I think some people have that argument for Bitcoin. Like Bitcoin is just digital; it's just things on a screen. Like, why do you trust Bitcoin over the banks? And if your primary issue is that it's electronic, but the whole it's a different idea. So, what would you say to those some people like that, Jeremy?
Well, I mean, to answer that question directly, my first response is because it's decentralized. Bitcoin versus the electronic, Federal Reserve notes. It's not consolidated into the hands of one group or one individual. That's the part of the design. It doesn't have, Bitcoin doesn't currently have anything backing it other than reputation, basically, and it's gaining purchasing power. But it technically doesn't have anything backing it. It ties into the Federal Reserve notes. The fact that they're able to print it literally out of thin air, it's because there's nothing backing it. The only thing that backs the quote unquote money of the United States is the mythical full faith and credit of said United States. And you mention these things, hardcore statists who are very nationalistic or what they would consider patriotic would get defensive and say, well, that matters, the full faith and credit. Because you ask them, what does that actually mean? What does the full faith and credit of a country mean? And they can't even answer that question. In reality, it's pretty simple. It's just one giant IOU. Hey, yeah, I'll get you back. That's what that means, the full faith and credit. It's based off the economy, supposedly, based off like the GDP and stuff, which is basically the citizens' effort and future efforts. That's what's used as the currency, which ties into our previous conversations about being slaves, because you are in that situation. Your future earnings and your children's future earnings, that's what the full faith and credit is based on, because any government doesn't have any money. You were saying how some people will say, oh, the government prints the money, and yeah, they can just make it. Well, yeah, because they don't have any money of their own. Every bit of money that any government ever attains has to be first taken from somebody else, usually through force of some sort of another. So they don't have anything. There was a time when the money in this country was backed by gold and silver, and at least then there was some control where the people, there was something tangible behind it. There was, because gold does have it, gold has an intrinsic value, and it's, as you said, it's been used as, a currency and as real money for thousands of years. But when that was taken away, that happened incrementally. From the start of the Federal Reserve in 1913, and then Roosevelt started to, first Roosevelt stole all the gold.
Bank of Britain as well. Yeah.
He literally stole everybody's
Bank of
gold.
England.
If you like your gold, you can keep your gold.
Yeah, that's pretty much, yeah. I don't even think he made those promises.
No.
Which ties back to another previous conversation we had about government learning, and that's why Obama learned now that he can say you can keep it. FDR didn't even say it. They just came up with some cockamamie scheme why they had to give their gold over, and they just passed a law and said everybody had to turn over their gold. That'll
never happen now, man. Come on.
Yeah.
The past, you can't go
There's
off
the
what
past.
happened in the past. Yeah, come on.
Yeah. Well, they could do it again, but much of the gold since then, unfortunately, has shifted into the hands of the people behind the scenes running the governments across the world. The central banks, they have a lot, they have most of it, and small, little people like us are hoarding it whenever we can. But most of it is already out of our hands. Until more is mined and we can do something about that. But the point was that they took that, he took it away, and then Nixon severed all ties with it. What was that, 71, somewhere around there?
71.
Where he severed ties from the gold standard altogether, and from that point on, the money was literally backed by nothing. And
Fiat.
yeah, it became pure fiat currency where they can print it, and again, most people just assume, oh, the government's in charge of money, so the Treasury, or now the Federal Reserve, is printing the money, so that's money. So they print it, they give it to us, not realizing, as you were saying about inflation, how every time they add more, every time they increase the money supply, it causes the value of the money already in existence to drop. There's no way around that. Once you have a currency that has nothing backing it other than some mythical credit, when you increase the supply, it naturally, the purchasing power naturally has to drop. I mean, most estimates say that I think the purchasing power has dropped. They say somewhere around like 95% since the creation of the Federal Reserve, and much of that was escalated after the full severing from the gold standard.
Yeah.
It's slowly decreased between 1913 and 1971, and then it's just all downhill in the last 40 plus years.
Yeah.
But again, getting people to even get that far is a tough task, because it's either they believe the government has the legal right to print money, so that's what they're going to use, and they won't bother to question it, or they'll think they'll be the anti-corporation people, the anti-private people who just want to have their government control the money supply. Nobody wants to think that it could possibly be worthless, because that's a scary proposition. They want to look at the propaganda that goes through the media and stuff, and anybody that's hoarding gold or silver is crazy, or an extremist, or these days basically a terrorist. Any politician or prospective politician who talks about even auditing the Fed or returning to the gold standard is immediately mocked and ridiculed, and that's what the majority of the people see. And so they don't bother to get back into this. They're just like, gold, oh, who needs that? I got money. I got a pocket full of these. I'm good to go.
Yeah. There's also this I don't know how to say it right. Systemic idea. There you go. There's this systemic idea that money is evil, and that's held by a lot of people on the left. The more communist-leaning statist. They're the same people that say guns are evil, or weed is evil, or this is evil, or that is evil. It's like a inanimate object cannot be inherently evil. Like, money is a tool. Guns are a tool. A hammer is a tool. I mean, the reason money was created in humanity, in the world, was to provide ease between transactions. So you didn't have to trade your bushel of hay for a goat. Well, if the guy didn't want a bushel of hay, but you really needed that goat, you could sell your bushel of hay to someone, get money, and give him the money, which he could go trade for whatever else. A lot of people don't look at it that way. They think money is the root of all evil. But I like to say that fiat is, if you're going to call something evil, fiat is definitely evil, because it tricks people into thinking that things are worth stuff when they're not. It's like the whole world's believing, or especially America, but the whole world, any country with a central bank, it's like they've tricked everyone into believing a lie, that this is actually worth something. And I don't know what to tell people. I don't know what to say. I don't know. Acquire stuff that you can barter with for the fiat collapse. I don't. I wouldn't worry until either two things: the oil runs out in the world, or you start seeing alternative energies that the dollar can't control come about. That's when I would probably say dump, dump, dump. But you have to realize that every dollar that the Fed prints up or makes is also going to use to kill brown people in other countries with drones and soldiers and bombs and uranium tipped bullets and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The war isn't cheap, but when you can print infinite amount of money, it becomes free. And most I don't know if America has solved the problem of empires dying due to continual war by the central bank model, or if it's an inevitability that a central bank and a fiat currency will collapse any government.
There's a guy that I got really into before I started learning about voluntarism. His name is Mike Maloney, and his book is called Rich Dad Guides to Investing in Precious Metals. And it's a pretty dreary title, but very fascinating, intriguing book. And I recommend it to everybody who wants to learn about monetary system, Federal Reserve, precious metals, and how the economy works. I learned so much. And basically, one thing that when I first got into this stuff, I was, looking at Ron Paul a lot and Peter Schiff. And one thing they talk about a lot is the economic collapse, which to me is more like, I look back on it now, it's like doom porn. You're looking at, oh my God, economic collapse. I got to, hoard food, hoard water, hoard gold, hoard silver, right? And you're just full of fear. But what Mike Maloney taught was more like, first of all, he kind of redefined it as being a wealth transfer. And I like that term better, wealth transfer, because that's essentially what currency creation, or the mandrake mechanism, which essentially mandrake mechanism is the same thing. It's just referring to, I think this was coined by G. Edward Griffin in his book Creature from Jekyll Island. There was a magician in the 1940s who basically had the so-called ability to make things appear and disappear at will. So so hence the mandrake mechanism for the Federal Reserve. But yeah, so he coined this term, the wealth transfer, because as the Federal Reserve prints more currency, the effect is that it only gets its value by stealing value from currency in existence, right? So it is a thief of value. And then whenever you give this newfound stolen currency to the special interest groups, you are transferring the wealth from the middle class, the productive class, the industrials, the people who actually produce things of value. You're transferring that to the special interest groups and to the government, to the military and industrial complex, to every single connected corporate fascistic interest that exists, right? So that's essentially what happens. And so he basically shows these, he calls them wealth cycles, right? How, you just look since, you can also call them boom bust cycles, right? Since the Federal Reserve was created, you look at the different times of the booms, which would be, the first boom would be like the 1920s, the roaring 20s, and then, all that printing, resulted in the collapse of 29. And then because basically they couldn't redeem all of the notes back into gold as it was one, I believe it was 1 ounce of gold was good, equal to $50, right? So the conversion was 1 ounce of gold equals a $50 bill, right? $50, you can go to any bank or Federal Reserve branch, bring a $50 bill and get your 1 ounce of gold. And that effectively ended with FDR's New Deal, right when he did the executive order to confiscate and nationalize the gold from the people. It was essentially the first bailout of the Federal Reserve, and that was the first wealth cycle. And then you had the Bretton Woods system, which was the Federal Reserve was the currency that tied all the other currencies, and then and then the dollar was backed by gold, and then eventually that was inflated because the governments tried to they say, you know what, we don't trust the Federal Reserve anymore. You're printing so much money, give me my gold back. And so I think in the late 1960s they were giving the gold back to these countries, like different countries like France and a few other countries.
Germany.
Yeah, probably Germany a little bit. And then finally the Federal Reserve knew that it didn't have enough gold to redeem for all of the banknotes that it issued. And so in 1971, Nixon comes out and says, you know what, we're going to sever the gold window. Nobody else can redeem your notes. Everybody has just fiat currency from now on. And it was the greatest heist in history. And nobody was punished. Nobody was, imprisoned. Nobody was arrested. Nobody was. They effectively stole the gold from all these nations that thought that their currency was backed by gold. Well, not their currency. The dollars that they had in their vaults was backed by gold. They thought, and now it's just pieces of paper, essentially worthless pieces of paper. And then right after that is the other wealth cycle. It was like the big hype, the inflation of the 1970s, roaring, prices going up, and then that kind of stabilized, and yeah, so it's really fascinating. You look in history as these wealth cycles happen, and you can see the prices of commodities, and that's the other amazing thing is gold. It's just a commodity. It's just like wheat or like food, like coffee, like anything that's traded. Gold and silver is just a commodity. It happens to be the commodity that we use to facilitate trade. But again, when you go and buy, like if you go to the precious metal store, you say you buy gold, you're using your money to buy gold, and then, or if let's say they pay you in gold, again, you're just using your product or service to buy money, and then you can use that money to buy something else, right? Or if you go and work for somebody and they pay you in money, you're using your services to buy money. It's kind of an interesting way to look at it. I like to look at it that way, as a commodity. Just like any other commodity, it's just something its usefulness is in trade. That's it. Like you said, Dave, it's just a tool. So
yeah, it just drives me nuts when the left, well, I don't want to say the left because that makes me sound like I'm on the right. When the commies say, money is the root of all evil, and down with the banks and down with this, and I go, okay, find me a bank that isn't propped up by government. Well, what are you saying? I'm saying that we should get rid of government because they prop up the banks, the evil banks. No, well, we got to have government. Okay, all right, my bad. And I just turn around and walk away.
Yeah, well, most of them that say, money is the root of all evil, that's been beaten into their heads, and that's that goes along with hating the greedy capitalists and the corporations that destroy the world. It's all rhetoric and propaganda that people have been fed their entire lives, so they don't question it. But again, as both of you said, now it is money is all it is. It's a medium of exchange, and a lot of the people people you're referring to, Dave, who say that it's the root of all evil. So I've heard a lot of them say that, we can just go back to barter, and it's like, well, no, that doesn't work on a large scale. That's kind of why money was created, as you said, in the first place. Personally, for my business, I started offering barter as a payment option for my clients, but that's just me, one guy running his own company, and I don't do it with everybody, because the problem, as you said, becomes you have to find a trading partner who will take what you have to offer in return for what you want, or go find a middleman or two or three to be able to trade back and forth to get, which becomes extremely time consuming. It also creates usually storage issues, because you have to have a lot of something sometimes to be able to trade it for what you want of something else, depending on what the value is determined at. But people don't want to, they hear money's evil. They're told to hate the rich. The rich have money. That must be the problem. Fine. Let's take all the quote unquote money out of the way and see how long you survive. Most people won't be able to figure out how to deal with that.
What do you own that you could trade?
Yeah, a lot of people aren't. You were talking about the both of you were talking about the doom porn of the economic collapse. It is. I mean, I've joked about it before in past episodes, but the threat of a Weimar Republic's situation happening here is always present. It's almost unavoidable when you continue to print money out of nothing. Eventually, you will reach that point where hyperinflation will happen. They've gotten, government and the banks have gotten smarter about it and figured out ways to stave it off for longer and longer and longer. It is a good idea to prepare as if it's going to happen. I don't, like you said, the people that promote the doom porn for that stuff. I'm not saying you should go hardcore into it, but I tell people all the time it's a good idea. I try to get my friends and family to do it. When you have a couple of, even if you just want to start with silver, if you got these days, the price is still hovering around 17, somewhere in that neighborhood.
It's 1580, something like that.
It's even lower now.
Very cheap. It's very cheap. It's unnaturally cheap.
Well, yeah, with good time to buy. But if you end up with 40, 50, 60 extra bucks 1 week or two, just toss it and pick it up and just stockpile some. Because
I'd say the same with Bitcoin as well.
Well, anything that's not the U.S. dollar is a good idea to look at. I
got to get my Canadian dollars. Oh yeah, no, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Any fiat currency is a bad idea. Gold, silver, Bitcoin. You said ammunition. Yeah, it's true. Things like that, because as you said earlier, Daniel, all the different things that have been used in the past. It's just a matter of what the people at the time decide on has value, and they're willing. As you said, if the more scarce it is, the better, because that means it can retain its prices longer. So.
Side note: if you are thinking about stockpiling ammo, 22 long rifle. That's what you need to be buying, not 9mm 45, just 22. I think that's like already underground currency and for some of my friends. So they'll trade you whatever you want for that 22 long rifle ammo.
It's hard. Well, for a long time it was hard to come by up here. So
I think that the idea is right. It doesn't really matter what you have if everything collapses. But if you have a gun, you can pretty much get anything you want. I know that completely destroys the idea of the non-aggression principle and all that. But if someone else has a gun and they have no ammo, they're going to trade you what they can to get that ammo. If someone's threatening you and you have ammo, then you can defend yourself. There's a lot of things that people don't think about how useful just even silver and gold and Bitcoin and stuff like that can just really give you some kind of safety net if your bank account means nothing. But what you were saying about the getting out of fiat is there anything that you could think of that people like? All right. See, people think that there's this idea of there's a safe alternative, right? And there's no such thing as a safe alternative, right? So there's nothing you can do. You can only take risks. It's that freedom too that we were talking about. Mm-hmm. And you can either hedge your bet that your dollars are going to be worth something in 10, 26 months, or you can hedge your bet on stuff that is being proved time and time again that people will accept. I mean, I don't think there's anybody in this country right now that if you had an ounce of gold on you and you walked up to them and they had dollars on them and you said, I will trade you this ounce of gold for this amount of dollars, they wouldn't just do it because they know that gold's going to be worth that.
Actually, I would have to challenge that point. I believe Mark Dice did a video
Yeah,
on that
I was gonna say I saw those
where
videos.
he stood at like I think you're right on a large scale, Dave. But there are people that actually have no clue that gold is anything other than something they would put in jewelry or that quote unquote gangsters use on their teeth. Like honestly, there are that video was hysterical.
It was.
He
I
stood
haven't
out
seen
there.
it.
He stood out in front of this. He stood out front of a gold and silver dealer with what it was a 1 ounce gold coin, right?
1 ounce Canadian maple leaf. Yeah, 999.999 pure.
Yeah,
gold.
yeah. Worth. I mean, an ounce right now is still going for what,
Yeah,
1,200 somewhere.
at that time it was like 1,400, 1,500.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So at the time it was 1,400. I think he was offering it to people for like $100 or something ridiculous.
No. The face value. Okay, so
That's right.
Every gold coin and silver coin has supposed like legal tender value, right? So like an American Eagle, it says $1, right? So theoretically, let's say I remember asking the guy, well, what does that mean? Why does it say $1? Well, if there's no money, if something happens to our currency, you can trade this for $1, right? And the same thing with gold. Like gold has $50 as legal tender status, right? But so Mark Dice was going around to the people and saying, I got this for $50, but I really want to get rid of it. I'll sell it to you for $25. Would you take it? They're like, nah, I don't need gold. And he was like, oh, you got too much gold at home? Yeah, I got too much.
Yeah, people. Yeah, that's what it was. People
I don't know. There's like some random dude walks up to you on the street and says, "Hey, I have a pure gold coin." You're gonna
Most people don't care. It's a really
you're
amazing.
no you're not.
Oh no,
you're too naive here. You're not thinking of being swindled.
We're not. We're not. No,
some random guy walks up and goes, "I have a
all right,
1 ounce silver piece that I will sell you for $50."
No, okay, Dave,
I'm like, can we go get this verified?
Okay, well, yeah, it's okay. See, you didn't let us finish the story, Dave.
Okay.
He was purposely doing it outside of a gold and silver dealer because when the person initially balked, and whether it was because they thought, like you said, a scam right away or something like that, he said, "We can go in right now, and they can." He's like, if you want, we can go inside right now, and these people in this gold and silver store can verify that it's worth. And I mean, I'm
you're
sure
still gonna think that they're running a racket.
People wouldn't even consider it.
I would consider it. I'd say I'll give you $1 for that.
One of my favorite ones. He goes to a taco stand. He tries to pay for his taco with like a what was it, like a 1 ounce gold coin. He's like, "Do you guys accept this?" They're like, "No, only dollars." and yeah, it's really amazing. Like one woman, I remember he's like, "I'll trade you this for $25. No. All right, 10. No. All right, give me that bottle of water and I'll give you this. No, I don't want it.
Yeah, and if I was to walk up and be like, "That's worth $1,200," she would be like, "Yeah, here, have whatever I got."
If she knew, that's the whole idea.
But the point is that it's even if they do think it's a scam, people they don't recognize that because just as the other example Danilo's bringing up, they're trained to think that the dollar is the only thing that matters. That what people we talked about FDR and how he literally just stole the gold from citizens. Most people on the left and the right, I know a lot of them who think FDR was a swell guy, and because they believe they were indoctrinated just like we were, and you learn in school that the New Deal was a wonderful thing, and how FDR got us through the Depression and helped us, and held out of the war as long as he could, and only came in at the last minute, and because of that, then that helped the economy, and people believe these lies. So when they look at FDR taking the gold, they don't see it as this theft, what it actually was. They think, good guy, must have had good reasons. Okay. Nixon comes along. You were saying earlier, Danilo, how nobody got punished. Yeah, punished. Geez, outside of Nixon getting tripped up in the Watergate scandal, aside from that, all the people involved were lauded for what they did. There's like monuments built to some of these people. It's crazy because nobody understands what actually happened. So like I said, that's one thing. A lot of people, even people who will status who would be down on Nixon because of the other things he did will still look at him removing the gold standard and thinking that's a good thing because that's been beaten into their head that it's better to have at one point the U.S. Treasury and now the Federal Reserve. It's better to have this one entity in charge and giving us this quote unquote legal tender, which again is just so laughable because where did they get the authority to make this legal tender? They just plucked it out of thin air and said, yes, we can do this. We can print money, which gets back into what you were saying about how, Danilo, you were saying how the Federal Reserve not only prints money out of nothing, but when it writes checks, it creates money out of nothing. Because part of the whole system is that for every dollar that it loans out, it's allowed to make 9, and it's allowed to print 9 into existence out of literally nothing.
Yeah, that's the fractional reserve lending system.
Yeah. But that's all part of it. So every time, and that's because it's tied to the banks are tied to the Federal Reserve because that's where they get their money from. They open and close the money windows when they feel necessary, and when the bigger banks who are connected, like the Chases and stuff like that, when things start to happen, look what happens. They get bailed out with more fake money, which just decreases the wealth in everybody else's pocket. So you are effectively being stolen from twice because
and then they buy up real estate and gold and tangible items.
That's the scam right there. They use the people's belief that this currency is really money and has value, and then they use this fake monopoly money to buy things of real value, like real estate, like ammunition, like whatever in the things in the real world that people use real resources and real labor to produce. They just print up this magical fairy dust fantasy money and they buy it all up. And another great situation where I like to start the discussion on money and economics is playing Monopoly with somebody. I play Monopoly and I say, what is the difference between this Monopoly dollar bill and this dollar bill? All right. I think that's a great question. And people are like, well, that's legitimate. That, created by the government. Well, it's a piece of paper with ink, with pictures of dead presidents. And they happen to be most of the dead presidents like
Andrew Jackson.
like Andrew Jackson, right? Yeah, like the somebody
fought his whole
posted,
life to end the Bank of America. Yeah.
He destroyed I believe it was the second central bank in the country, and then I believe
which was a bona fide central bank.
Yeah, and then the third one was the Federal Reserve, right? So this is actually the third time that the bankers tried to establish their foothold and control the currency. Do
you think America would be? Do you think America would be completely different, like 180, if just the people just said no more Federal Reserve and just shut it down and quit using the money?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a big confidence thing. Definitely, people are taught, like this is part of the thing about government schools. Why it's so important that people go to government schools. People are taught that the government is legitimate, and whatever the government does is legitimate. Right? It's the complete appeal to authority and the appeal to antiquity. That most of this generation, all we know is using dollars and cents. That's all we know. We have no link of gold to dollars. Right? If you were born before 1933, you would understand that the currency was backed by gold. If you were born after, you would have no idea that it was backed by gold, and it would mean nothing to you. Gold has nothing to do with money. What are you talking about? It's just, like you said, Jeremy, it's just in wrappers, chains, and teeth and bracelets. That's all. It's just jewelry, right? It's just jewelry. Stop. It's not money at all. And another thing I like to bring up is a very simple concept. I say, take a dollar bill, and I say, how much do you think it costs for the Federal Reserve to print this dollar bill? Right? Ink, paper, and transportation, around 6 cents, right? And I say, okay, how much do you think it costs to print and apply ink and paper and transportation on $100 bill? Right? And the answer is about 7 cents. Why? Because it has an extra zero, right? A little more ink, okay? and then that alone just blows people's minds. Like, wait a minute, what? And then like, all right, now, how easy is it to make gold or silver? And do you know how gold or silver is made? Right? There's two ways that I know of. right? One is the supernova, explosion of a star or the death of a star, and the other one is two colliding neutron stars, right? So neither of which the federal government or the central or the Federal Reserve is capable of doing. Which
Not yet, at least.
I was gonna say, give them time. They'll figure it out.
or not even is capable of doing, but they claim the authority and the right to fool the people that they're doing it, which is exactly the reason why if you look at every single war since the Federal Reserve was created, the convertibility of the dollar to gold was temporarily left, and you see the massive printing of money, fiat currency essentially to pay for the war, right? Massive. So it's only, and as Ron Paul said, right, the 20th century is no coincidence that the 20th century, is a century of central banking and the century of world wars, because it is only through central banking, mandrake mechanism, currency creation that war is enabled, that war is possible. Because how are you going to pay the people? If you're going to pay them in gold or silver, that's extremely limiting. You're going to run out. Let's say you pay them through taxing the citizens. Again, I think, Dave, you mentioned that in the last episode, right? You want to stop war, just give a tax, a war tax, apply that to their salary, and you're going to quickly see people, protesting.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Go to everybody. Yeah. Mr. IRS man comes to your house and says, "Hey, I need your kids, I need your wife, and I need you to come out on the front porch real quick and sign your contract saying that you're beholden to pay this debt on our war that we're going to wage with the boogeymens and the drug addicts and the people of the world."
Yep. You see the Social Security, disability, your 401k, and war on terror.
I think it was just the war in Afghanistan and Iraq, not to count Yemen, Somalia, Libya, et cetera, that they're doing right now. Just Iraq and Afghanistan was $128,000 per person, and that's like even the people that aren't even born yet. That's the people that, like, if you're listening to this and your wife's pregnant, the government has basically signed a $125,000 contract for your child while it's still in the womb for this war on terror. And supposedly, I mean, they just came out the other day. What did they say? They that the war on terror has not decreased any terroristic activities, and the creation of the NSA has not stopped one terrorist plot.
Yeah,
now, I don't know if that's
more funding every year. Yeah,
I don't know if that's a lie. I don't know if they've stopped a lot, and they just want to tell everybody they haven't stopped them. There's so much clouded mystery in it that you really don't know. Like, the only thing you say is government is bad right now, and it needs to go away. But you really don't know exactly all what they're doing. I mean, there's no if they came out and told everyone what they were doing, people would be in the streets rioting. There would be a 300 million man march on Washington to kill all of them. So it just what you were saying about every war is free now because they hedge. The government can wage war by just printing currency. There's a reason. I mean, there's a reason why there was no war for 3 or 4 years while Bush was that end of Clinton, beginning of Bush, and then he got us into those wars because all those military contracts were like, or all those military companies were like, hey, and all the oil prices and all this, and they needed that shit to go down. The military companies needed a reason to make $100 million pilot or jet fighters and all this, these big aircraft carriers. If there's no war, then they go tits up, and they, and people aren't just gonna say, hey, here's all this buttload of money to build this stuff that we don't need. Because at this point in time, all right, this is what I would like to ask any conservative or anybody that's like minarchist or whatnot. Can they point out or name a country that would openly, with flags, attack the United States of America? They would be wiped off the face of the planet in the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks. and then America would put in the government that they want there, and your society would be erased. So there's no country that could possibly attack the United States if they just maintained a purely defensive strategy. Not 900 bases across the world, not 12 bases surrounding Iran, but they're the big boogeymans. If there was just bases along the borders of the country, do you think anybody would attack? No, but how would you fund that military? It's like it goes into that fireman attitude. If there was if the Federal Reserve wasn't stealing from everybody to make war to prop up its corporations and itself, then they would all go bankrupt.
Well, most people, that's actually, a common argument against, people like ourselves in our position that, you need the military to protect us. Well, they're not protecting us now. Like you said, that, they could just easily do a completely defensive position and save a heck of a lot of money. Number one. Number two, the same people will say that it's, even if they claim to be anti-war, they think they need this stuff. And, when we bring up the possible privatization of such services, everybody panics and says, oh, somebody will take over. Well, no, because if you take away the central banks, like we've been discussing, if you take them away and they're not funding an army with fake money, war is ridiculously expensive. Who can afford to do that? I don't personally know anybody who can, and there's not too many.
There's a reason why Hitler had to keep invading countries and getting those tax bases. That was the only reason he was invading.
Well, yeah, because you run out of money eventually. It's not cheap. That's why the central banks are the, like you said, Danilo, they're the key to this, and that's the industrial. The military-industrial complex relies on them just handing over money, and giving them, they're among the special interest groups, the contractors and all that stuff. They're among the special interest groups that get the first crack at the new money before it loses its value. And as I think you said, Dave, they automatically go out and buy all the important stuff, the stuff that can be used, the armor, the bullets, they build the tanks. But again, the problem is if you don't have that, then they can't build these things. That what you were asking the conservatives and the minarchists and the like, yeah, it's I ask questions like that too, and they get befuddled because they don't know how to live, and that drive to keep convincing yourself that you're being protected by these interests it becomes harder with each passing day. Like, I don't even know how some of them do it anymore. It's like, how do you defend that?
You think any CEO at Boeing or Lockheed Martin or any intelligence corporation gives a flying shit about you? Like, no, they don't care about the safety of you. They care about the safety of themselves and the security of their financial endeavors. So these people that the government subsidizes and subcontracts out to do all this stuff, Blackwater or whatever it's called now, all these other things that they get them to do. Hey, we told them not to do that, but we paid them. To think that America's army right now, or army, the army is unconstitutional, but whatever. To think that the United States armed forces are protecting this country at this point in time in history is a ludicrous notion. And that's the most non-sophist way I can say that without getting too temperamental or yelling or calling someone an idiot. But if you think at this point in time that the United States military every facet of it is protecting the United States of America and not corporate interests, you really need to pull yourself away from, your Fox News, your CNN, your Wall Street Journal, whatever, your pastor or whoever's telling you this, and really examine this and think about it, because all you have to do is follow the money, as I'm sure Danilo could probably explain. All you have to do is follow the money. Look at all these big corporations that would not be getting money if we weren't empire building. And people that will sit there and say that America isn't empire building, name one other country that has 980 bases across the world at this point?
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
Name
remember.
one country. Like that, you can't, because there's none. Like even the evil Russia doesn't have that many.
Yeah. What's amazing is that not only is the United States number one in terms of military spending, we spend more than the bottom, than the next 25 countries put together in terms of. And not only are we the number one military spending, we're the number one arms dealer. So we arm all these countries that we're actually fighting, right?
Yeah, they arm their boogeymen.
Yeah, exactly.
They arm their bad guys. Like,
Yeah.
you want to know who funded the Taliban? America. You want to know who funded Al Qaeda? America. You want to know who funded the Nazis? America. So it just goes to show you that they need these wars to grow their state. They need, I heard it my whole life and I never really understood it, but they say war is the health of the state. And the reason that is because under the pretext of war, the state can do whatever it wants in the name of defense. It can intern thousands of Japanese people. It can collect all your gold. It can tax you at whatever rate it wants. If you believe that this nation, if you're a nationalist, an idiot, a useful idiot, if you're a nationalist and you believe that this country is protecting you and has your best interest in mind, go look at all the millions of people that died fighting pointless wars. Go look at all the. I could go on and on.
Let me bring the conversation back to money really quick. I have another idea. I just thought of. Mike Maloney made a great analogy to those people that say we need the Federal Reserve because as the population increases, we need to create money, in conjunction with the population increasing. Which actually, I remember myself thinking that, when I was trying to figure this stuff out, I'm like, you know what? Maybe
everybody gets a car.
Yeah, maybe if it just increases at the same rate as population, maybe then we'll reach parity. But no, it's not about how much money should we print. That's not the issue. It's not really how much money is in existence, right? The issue is the fact that we have a central entity that claims a monopoly status on the printing of money, the control of the currency. Because one thing, he made an interesting idea. He said you can take one gold coin, you can put it then in a vault, right? Have lock it up, have security cameras on it, nobody touches the gold coin, and then you can take the individual gold atoms, which is some enormous sextillion number, and you can distribute that throughout the population, and you can give a serial number on each atom, right? And that would be a stable monetary system because nobody would be able to inflate it at all. It would remain constant. Even if, and you know what, if the population increases and the currency does not increase or the money does not increase, that's excellent because you know what that means? That's called deflation. Prices actually go down and the currency that you're saving actually increases in value, which people have no idea what that means because that never happens to any country around the world.
What you're saying is the government needs to find unobtainium, all right, and then issue bond certificates for each individual atom of this unobtainium, and it's locked in a secure vault, Fort Knox.
Well, he's just making an example that.
No. I'm just.
Yeah. I know. But
I'm playing devil's advocate.
And this
here.
is also why Bitcoin is very valuable because it has a finite number of Bitcoins that will ever be mined. Right? Was it 21 million? And so far,
yes.
I think 11 million.
I think it's 36 million.
No, 21 was
Yeah.
the
Oh,
number.
21. Okay, my
Yeah.
bad.
So it has a finite number, and it's being mined slowly, and it's like you need a computer that has special computing right powers and that and I think every time a new Bitcoin is mined, it gets successively more difficult. So I think they said we're gonna mine the last Bitcoin in like the year 22 something. So but the idea is that it's stable and no central
Well,
agency
boring any
and then
technological advance,
yeah, and then the other people like you, Jeremy, you said that gold and silver, the reason that people were using it for thousands of years is because it has intrinsic value, which is actually the reason that Peter Schiff was saying. But I think that's one aspect of it. Like gold.
No, no,
gold
yeah.
you can use for jewelry. You can use it for fillings. You can use it for various things. And silver has, oh my God, silver is like. I believe it's like the second most useful commodity next to oil right now in the world. Like silver is like massively useful. It's consumed. That's the difference between gold and silver. Gold is hoarded in central banks, and silver is consumed at a massive rate. Which is
you can even eat silver.
yeah. Colloidal silver, right? You can even it's medicinal. It has so many uses. Hospitals and water filtration, solar panels, windows, so many things, and which is another reason why the discrepancy between gold and silver right now, which is like the price is like one ounce of gold equals about 75 ounces of silver. And historically, before 1913, the ratio was always about 1 to 12. 1 ounce of gold equals 12 ounces of silver. And the reason was because that was the ratio that was in the ground, right? But now it's been so massively distorted by all this currency creation that it's now in a huge bubble and is really about to burst, and because there is so much, we're just overflowing with these Federal Reserve notes, and people just have no idea. I can't believe it. They just no idea, and people think that it's normal that silver, went from, I think it went from like $5 around year 2000, skyrocketed to like $50 in 2011, and now it's like on a downturn. It's like $15.80 now. And people they don't question. They're like, what? That doesn't make sense. But okay, it's just a fact of life. It's just really funny, because nobody cares. Nobody thinks it has a real effect in your life. Like, why should I buy this stuff? What use is it to me now? And the way I look at it is like, it's like, why would you get a fire extinguisher or even a gun? Why would you get a gun? Hopefully you won't have to use it now. Right, but it's basically an insurance policy in case you do have to use it, in case the government defaults on its debts, which is inevitable. It's just a matter of time now. So yeah, diversifying into anything else other than Federal Reserve notes is an extremely wise decision, and I encourage everyone to do it, because doesn't matter where you hold your Federal Reserve notes. If it's in the bank, if it's under your mattress, if it's in your hand, it will be deteriorating like termites are eating it in your hand. You are losing value every single day you hold it. You are losing value. Your wealth that you worked hard every single day of your life, it's being destroyed. People don't really care.
I felt the same way when Bitcoin went from when I bought it. It was like 900 a Bitcoin. Now it's worth like 215-ish, 220. Yeah. But after I read about and really thought about it, the value of Bitcoin to the American dollar has a lot of different variables, and it really doesn't matter how much the Bitcoin is worth compared to the American dollar. It's how much will someone take, or what will they take for that Bitcoin.
And that's the other problem, is we're all using the dollar or fiat currency to measure everything else. We use fiat currency like everyone wants to know, how much is gold worth, how much is silver worth, how much is a Bitcoin worth. No, you don't want to do that, because fiat currency is it's the perverted, it's the corrupted currency. You can't. It's like using a liar to determine who's a truthful person. You can't do that. You have to use the finite commodity to measure the unlimited fantasy thing that we call fiat currency. So people have such a warped notion of money that they trust this thing that can be created billions and trillions at a whim, yet gold and silver that it says has very finite supply. They're like, I don't see what it could do for me in my life.
Yeah, well, I said earlier, I think that's been done by design, that people don't know these things. We're not taught this stuff. And again, you said it, Danilo, the people that born after a certain time have no clue because they don't know any differently. Which ties into one of our favorite fallacies, the appeal to antiquity, where that's just the way it's been. So why question it? I would push back on one thing you said, though, about the gold and silver. For the average person, I would agree that using it as sort of an insurance policy is a good thing. But for the more, slightly more adventurous out there that are getting into this, it can be used. It can be used right now. You can, if you want to go more of the agorist route and get away from Federal Reserve notes altogether, that's a scary proposition for a lot of people because when you sit down and think about it, how many things do you buy on a regular basis? How many stores do you go to? How many, bills and or regular purchases do you have set up on automatic payments on credit cards? All these things that you're used to having using Federal Reserve notes or some form of that, some form of a credit that you think is tied to Federal Reserve notes. That will.
So when the currency is about to collapse, you go get 10 credit cards, right? And you max them all out on buying silver and gold, right? And then you bury the silver and gold somewhere, and then all of it collapses, and then when you get out, you're a rich man, right?
Yeah, that'll work. You just gotta time. You just gotta time it right.
You just gotta time it.
Well, yeah, but what I was saying is,
I mean, because they're just going to get bailed out anyways, right?
Well, until they can't anymore, like we said.
I'm just joking, guys. Don't do that. That sounds like a bad idea.
Yeah. But no, I mean, like I said, it can be used now. There are people that trade in it. There are people that will accept it as payment. Same thing with Bitcoin. As you said, Danilo, diversification is a wonderful thing. There are people that are willing to play with their money and put it in the stock market. I'm not somebody like that because not that I have enough money to be doing that, but even if I did, I'm a little too wary of that being, as manipulated as it always is.
And it's gone.
Yeah, exactly. But with gold and silver, and or Bitcoins or any, burgeoning cryptocurrency, any other precious metals, anything else that, any commodity, any solid, hard commodities that you can get your hands on and keep, is good for insurance. But, to hasten the collapse, one way to do that, and prepare yourself at the same time is to acquire these metals and find people you can trade with for everyday items. So it's almost like training yourself to use these things, especially for people that are new to this. You get used to using it. You get used to using it to purchase things. And the more and more people that just stop using FRNs, the quicker it will, the value will collapse on it because nobody will want to use them. And then the government will be sitting on this huge stockpile that nobody wants. I'm sure people across the world will try to buy it because they'll still be stuck in the propaganda cycle. But you can use it now. I have friends that use it on a regular basis. There's been stories already in the past couple of years of people that have tried to go using just Bitcoin, only, and they found a way to survive. Traveling and paying for everything in Bitcoin. Like things like this are possible. It's just you have to be willing to restrict yourself a little bit in the present, because there are some people that won't take, that insist on cash or insist on you paying for a check. Or the bigger corporations are always, anybody connected to the bank is always happy when you pay with a check because then no money actually has to go anywhere because, people think when they write a check to somebody, the bank transfers that money over to their bank and then they get that. No, there's no transfer. It's a button. That's all it is. That's the transfer. It's ones and zeros that gets pressed. So they love it when you use checks. But you can start doing this now and that will like I said, it has a twofold effect. It gets you used to doing that, and it may just hasten the collapse and make everybody better off in the long run, because it will fall. And like Dave said, no, it doesn't matter where those dollars are. When it falls, you have absolutely nothing sitting in your hand. It's gone, and then people will panic. And that's a scary proposition when everybody when all the people who haven't bothered to prepare, when all the people who have believe the rhetoric that people like us are crazy or extremists or the tinfoil hatters, when all of those people who've believed those lies, when the dollar finally collapses, there's going to be a lot of freaked out people because they're not going to know what to do. They'll be lucky if they can figure out how to barter on their own, much less do anything else.
Yeah, and then they're going to get mad and riot and try to steal people's that actually did plan.
Yeah.
But no, I've been working on. I don't want to talk too much about it on a podcast, but just diversifying my savings and acquiring silver, acquiring Bitcoin, et cetera, and a lot of people think it's like, okay, I've got $10,000 in my savings account. Let me just go buy $10,000 with Bitcoin. No, don't do that. Take $100 out of that $10,000 every month and buy $100 worth of Bitcoin. Take $100 out and buy $100 worth of silver every month. And you create a buffer where you're always going to have fiat in your savings, and you're always going to have real money, real currency with you as well. And I would also like to say get ammunition. I know that sounds crazy to probably some of you Northerners or people out in California or whatnot, but there's a large part of this country that you don't see that will trade food, water, gas, whatever for bullets. I know that sounds crazy to the average person, but that is fact. They're not going to want your Bitcoins. They're not going to want your gold or silver. They're going to want bullets. So do that. Even if you're buying 100 rounds a year. 10 years, you got 1,000 rounds. So
yeah, Jeremy, that's a really good point about the agorism, right? Trading, using this stuff now, and I think that brings back. I was talking to Samuel Kovac, who's a Bitcoin specialist and lecturer, and that was one of the questions that he answered for me. Was people are saying, well, look at and Dave, you just mentioned like I bought it when it was 900, now it's 200. Look at all the money I lost. Well, if you're looking at it as a way to make a profit, don't do that. And the same thing with gold, silver. If you're looking at it to make a profit, don't look at it like that, right? Either you buy it for long term as an insurance, or you can buy it now and use it now, trade with it now, right? Then you're not really losing anything, right? You're just converting your wealth or your value into different forms, right? And in that sense, it's a wonderful thing to get used to doing to get out of the Federal Reserve note system. And so I really encourage people to do that, because you have to we have to start thinking independently of the government controlled currency. And I think I remember they were saying the IMF is like they're saying they're trying to do this special drawing rights or it's like the currency that's supposed to come after when the US dollar falls, but it really doesn't matter, because it's like the only people that suffer when a wealth transfer occurs or an economic collapse are the middle class. Those are the people that always suffers. Wherever the middle class goes, so goes the country, basically.
I mean, there's a reason why billionaires are buying tons of gold.
Yeah, like I like to describe to people also the hyperinflation in Weimar Republic. That's a great example of what happens when central banks just go crazy printing money. And interestingly enough, it was not even only the central banks that was printing money. Anybody who had a printer was printing money. Everybody was printing. And what was amazing was, I think it only took 5 years of that. It was like between 1919, gold was 1 ounce. 1 ounce equaled 100 German marks, right? And then by the end, 1924, it was 1 ounce of gold equaled 100 trillion German marks, right? And it was so, gold was so valuable at that peak that you could use, I believe it was 25 ounces of gold to buy 1 ounce of commercial real estate in the city of I guess it was Weimar, the city of Germany, which is amazing. Like, imagine how much would a block of commercial real estate cost in Manhattan right now. Just imagine that, right? And you can imagine, I kind of did this calculation. Let's say, for example, one block in Manhattan costs $20 million, right? Something like that. Let's say
No,
that,
200 million.
I mean, all right.
Yeah,
I
I was gonna say a Manhattan block. You'd probably be lucky to get one for 500 million.
All right, all right.
Depending on the
It's
depending
probably
on the
about 4
area.
billion,
Yeah.
4 or 5 billion.
All right,
whole-
all
a
right.
whole
So then
block,
I'm
yeah.
very conservative then. but
Yeah.
just for the sake of argument, if we said it was 20 million, then that would be
Yeah.
for 25 ounces of gold, that would be about $800,000 per ounce, right? If it was 20 million, so just calculate that up for 500 billion, right? So it's just a massive amount of value, because the thing that Mike Maloney says, and this is really awesome that people have to understand, is wealth is never destroyed. Wealth is only transferred. It is always transferred. You cannot destroy wealth. You can destroy the currency, the medium of exchange, by hijacking it, by printing it, by controlling it, by regulating it. You cannot destroy wealth, right? Wealth is something real that we all, you tangibly create wealth with our hands, right? Products and services. That's real wealth. You can't destroy that. So if we put our wealth into something real and tangible, like precious metals that cannot be printed at a whim, it will just be transferred to people who have tangible assets, whatever those tangible assets.
Yeah, I mean, if you think
be.
a Rockefeller's ever gonna, if you think a Rockefeller's ever gonna go hungry, you're losing your mind.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like,
J.P. Morgan, I believe, in 1910, right 3 years before the Federal Reserve was created, he said, "Gold is money. Always has been."
Yeah.
That's
I
it.
mean, if you're a billionaire now, if you're going to have financial advisors saying, "Hey, you need to get out of this currency. You're going to go get into a currency that's going to keep you on top, or you're going to get into precious metal, or you're going to buy real estate or whatnot." Your wealth is going to be retained. It doesn't matter what happens to any currency. So this whole idea, this communistic idea that you can take wealth from people and redistribute it, the people who want to be wealthy in this world are going to be wealthy, that have the means of attaining it. There was something that I think Zig Ziglar said, if you know who that is. Zig Ziglar said, if we took every ounce of wealth out of everybody's pockets, whatever you wanted to call it, and you distributed it across every other person on the entire planet, the same people within a certain amount of time would have all that money back, because they know how to get it. They know how to get all that wealth back. So it's one of those things where, a sucker's born every minute, and a fool is easily departed with his money. So it's one of those things that you can sit here and you can say, the rich are evil, but there's always going to be rich people in this world, and rich is not something that you can actually certifiably define. You can put up parameters and say that's what rich is, but rich is a subjective terminology. And so this whole idea of wanting what your neighbor has because you don't have it, or wanting what another man has, is just a bitch mode play, in my opinion. And that's a lot of what's wrong with this world. The richest man in the world could look at somebody that makes nothing, that digs ditches all day, and that guy goes home and he's happy, and he'll be envious of it. But the guy digging ditches and going home, and he could look at the richest guy in the world and say, "Yeah, I want that." You just got to be happy, I guess. You got to find out what makes you happy. And money isn't evil. Wealth isn't evil. What you do as humans to your other fellow humans can be evil or good.
Dave, you were saying that that again that everybody hates the rich, and how that is a subjective thing. It's funny because when the occupiers were out screaming about the 1%, and we are the 99%. They kind of apparently left out some figures, because they were just referring to what's going on here in the States. I think the actual numbers that came out was, worldwide, to be considered in the 1% is anybody making over $34,000 a year. So on world terms,
no. If you have $10,000 in your bank account, you're in the 1%.
Really?
Well, yes.
No, I'm just talking about like salary wise. Those numbers came out I saw those a couple times last year, and it's that the 1% make $34,000 a year, like worldwide. So people that complain about the rich, and and are mad that they're only making $50,000 a year. It's like,
as they're calling their girlfriend on their iPhone. It just there's people out there that can't even shower but once a month.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Like, fuck off. That's my 1F.
You make that kind of money, you're actually a lot better off than other people. So again, the anger is always directed in the wrong place. You need to direct it at the, if you want to be mad at anybody, be mad at the bankers, who are manipulating this system. But don't be mad at the guy who's worked his tail off to make some money, build a business from nothing. That's the one thing that so many people that complain about corporations and the
I think inherited wealth is another thing that they get angry about, which doesn't really make much sense to me.
Yeah, because if they made a bunch of money or won a bunch of money and then we're getting later on in life and we're going to hand it over to their kids, they would think nothing of it. But it's when somebody else.
Yeah. I mean, you ask any commie that's sitting there saying, that's not fair. John D. Rockefeller's son did nothing to obtain all that wealth and has so much power from it just from being born there. But if we swapped those roles, would that person have that same sentiment? I would say that would be very hard and very virtuous for them to have that same sentiment. Almost impossible. If you ask any occupier, quote unquote, or any socialist, hey, I'm going to give you a $1 billion bank account and a penthouse in Manhattan and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You can do with it whatever you want, and then just watch them for a year and see what they do. They're not going to go move to the Congo and build up villages. They're not gonna go to starving people and give them money and food. They're going to live their life how they see fit. And it's one of those things where no one can practice what they preach until they're walking in those shoes of someone that they're demonizing.
Well, yeah, because it's a heck of a lot easier to scream about redistributing wealth when it's not your wealth you're talking about. When it's somebody else's, it's a lot easier. So to finish off, I'll reiterate what I said earlier. Diversifying your assets that you have now is a good idea. I would encourage people to explore agorism, learn about it, see what's going on with that, and again, try to direct your anger at the right place. If people, if you're upset with the wealth situation, you're upset with the, even as Dave was saying, with the people with the inherited money. Well, try to realize that most of those people who made those what you consider ungodly amounts of money, a lot of them required government subsidies over the years, required special tax breaks, required all these things to get where they are. So if you take that out of the equation, it levels the playing field a lot more. To point to another thing Dave said about the Zig Ziglar quote, there's a good chance that will happen, but the people that will reacquire it, if the playing fields are level or leveled, should I say, the people that will reacquire it are the hardworking ones, the true entrepreneurs, the people that think of things, that have the idea men. Those will be the ones that will acquire it. And if you don't have a government to run to for subsidies, if something goes wrong, you tend to be a little more careful with what you do have. So instead of thinking of terms of money as, what's in your pocket, try to learn what money actually is. To go back to what Danilo said at the beginning, the difference between money and currency. There is a difference. People should learn that, and try not to get stuck in this cycle where it's the U.S. dollar is all that matters, and we need that. And if, when you hear people like us speak about getting rid of the government, and it's, oh no, what are we going to do? They'll just anybody can print money then. Well, yeah, that's kind of the point. Decentralize it, open up options.
There's a reason why Amazon has Amazon Bucks. There's a reason why eBay has PayPal. There's a reason why Walmart lets you buy gift cards. They're trying to get you to use their currency essentially.
Exactly, and that anybody could make a currency. It's a matter of how many people will adopt it for everyday use that gives it its value. So people are afraid of that. People need that conformity. People need that one thing to look to. Okay, government prints the money. Okay, we know that. Look how that's turned out. Look at all the figures we've talked about through this show. And if you think having more options is a bad idea, you probably lead a very, very boring life.
You should move to North Korea.
Yes.
I'll just wrap up and this will just be a question from anybody that hears this. If you want to answer it on YouTube or Facebook, whatever. Anytime you want to call someone a greedy capitalist, I want you to name them. Not this fictitious person that you have built up in your head. The guy with the monocle and the cigar and the top hat. Like, I want you to say that person is a greedy capitalist. And then I'm going to shit all over that by saying that person used government to obtain their wealth. In most cases. I mean, there's a few that haven't. But you have to realize that a lot of people, especially socialists and communists that hate the wealthy, they pine over the idea of government letting that wealth get redistributed or using government as a tool to redistribute that wealth. Who do you think controls the governments? The quote is, you're never going to be able to vote away $1 from a rich man's hand because he can pay the person who counts the votes. So think about what you're saying before you say it. Don't just repeat rhetoric that you've heard. And know that the true enemy is government intervention, government force. That is the problem. And to get any of your communistic ideas in place, you have to use force, which we can do a whole episode on that. But that's all I have. If you want to call someone a greedy capitalist, give me a name. We'll look them up. We'll search up. I guarantee you that they did not use voluntary means to obtain those large sums of money.
Yep, I would tend to agree. Most of the time, that is true. All right, I'll finish up. I want to mention, Jeremy, you were mentioning about the love of money. I wrote an article a while ago. It's called "Is Money the Root of All Evil?" And I see when somebody posts something about a similar question, the money is the root of all evil. I always see these Christian statists who comment underneath and say, no, the Bible says it's the love of money that is the root of evil, not money. It's the love of money. And I would even counter that and say, no, even the love of money is not evil, because in order to become a successful entrepreneur, you really have to love money. I think, it's like, if you really, you have to please your customer, of course. You have to give them a good product and a good service, but you also have to want to earn a large amount of money. Like that's the whole incentive to being an entrepreneur, is to become wealthy, right? If you and Dave, if you're talking about somebody who has achieved their wealth through providing value in society, then that's a wonderful thing. And they love money. And what's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with that. So I wouldn't even say the love of money that's not even the root of all evil, because again, money is just a tool. It's an inanimate object, and just like anything else, somebody can misuse it, can hijack it, and use it for their own base ends, and to the detriment of everyone else. And if that group of people happens to be in government, I'm sorry, but every single time that has happened, it's led to disaster. And another interesting thing is, I was reading this guy. I think it was the Daily Reckoning, which is a really pretty cool website I used to follow. And this guy gave his editor, he's like, I want you to do this project. Go and research all the fiat currencies that have ever been in existence in history, and start from A, and I want you to go all the way to Z. Just tell me all the fiat currencies in existence, right? All he got to was the B fiat currencies, and basically what they wanted to discover is what happened to them and why did they fail, right? And what he discovered was, he just got into the B's, and it was like 775 fiat currencies. He just got into the B's, right? And they all failed. None of them survived. Zero, completely collapsed. And pretty much the same thing, same reason, government control, inflation, hyperinflation, collapse, wealth transfer. Every single time. There is no point in history where a fiat currency has survived. And the average lifespan, this is a very interesting fact that Mike Maloney brought up, the average lifespan of a fiat currency is about 30 to 40 years. So if you look even in U.S. history from the Federal Reserve, every 30 to 40 years there was a monetary system change. Either the change from the convertibility of gold to FDRs. The bailout in 1933, and then you had the Bretton Woods system, and then you had that until you had the Nixon shock of 1971. Then you had the petrodollar, right? So now we're in the petrodollar, and that will come to an end. And we are actually around what are we, like 44 years now, right, since the petrodollar has been created. So we are due for a new currency.
We're past due.
We're past due. We're past due for a new currency. So
yeah, the government is $5 trillion in debt from the war on terror.
Yeah. So we're like having a party here at the expense of our children's prosperity and our grandchildren's prosperity. We are stealing their prosperity to fund our
they're stealing our kids to fund their wars.
Exactly. Well said. I mean, I don't like to use the word "our," right? The collective, but
it's not my government. I have no say in it.
I'll just speak to us three in this conversation. Dave's future kids. So
don't exist.
I hope
won't exist.
Perhaps. So I hope everyone enjoyed this conversation on money. There's a lot more we could talk about. Maybe we'll do another episode on other wealth cycles or the business boom and bust. Keynesian economics is just Austrian economics is just a fascinating topic to learn about. And just people, educate yourself because if you're dealing in this stuff every day, you might as well want to know where it comes from, and you might as well want to know what gives it value, because once the hyperinflation occurs, and it is a real thing, like you talk to people in other countries where it has occurred, like Colombia, like Zimbabwe, like recently, and even I'm from Peru, right? My cousin, he remembers in Peru when the sole, right? Now it's like the nuevo sole, but before it was just the sole. When they converted that, my cousin, he says he remembers his father with this pile of paper currency, and he's sitting in his kitchen just looking at it. He's like, you know what? This is all worthless. All of this is worthless.
I think that's what's going to happen in the EU right now.
So,
I would say within the next probably 10 years, because right now they're trying to prevent the countries from pulling out and not accepting the euro. If that happens, then the euro is kaput.
Yeah, it's all on a downward trend. I mean, it's like I like to make the comparison. People say the dollar is so strong. You should put your money in the dollar. No, it's like all the currencies are like falling, except the dollar is a little bit higher now, but it's still falling
because it's the only currency allowed to be traded by OPEC nations.
Yeah, it's backed by the might of the U.S. military. Basically, that's the only thing that gives it value, because they're forced to use it. But there are many countries that are now opting out of the U.S. dollar, and they are
they get quickly invaded and retrained.
Yeah, they are. But I'm telling you, the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Australia, so many countries right now.
Thanks for reminding me about this. I want everyone that's listening to this podcast, go look up what's happening up in Brazil and Cuba right now, where they're with their, in Cuba they have the anarcho-capitalistas.
Yeah.
That's a big movement growing over there. And in Brazil, they have these huge libertarian, we want free markets, we want this push that's happening right now that no one in the United States media is talking about. And America is supposed to be the bastion in the world of free markets. It just blows my mind that none of this is being talked about on these free market news corporations. So it just, it's exciting. I mean, I'm not saying Brazil's going to become some libertarian paradise, but what I'm saying is if Brazilians and Cubans are figuring this out, why aren't you?
Yeah. Do your research, learn economics, learn about money, read history, true history, okay? Forget about your government propaganda history and read some books, people, all right? Actually, I saw one of my friends, Nima Vedati, posted on his page. It's like a poster that was plastered near a university. It's like, read motherfucking books every single day. That's it. Read books.
Read a book. Read a book. Read a motherfucking book.
All right, so thank you very much.
I'm guessing you guys haven't heard that song.
No.
Buy some land, motherfucker. Buy some land.
All right, Dave.
Fuck spinning rims.
You're over your F limit, Dave.
Yeah, I'm way over it now.
All right, well, thank you everybody for listening to the Seeds of Liberty podcast. You can donate to us. We accept fiat, silver, gold, Bitcoin, Dogecoin, Litecoin.
It will quickly turn that fiat into silver.
Ammo, guns, anything that you wish to donate to help our cause.
You can mail all the ammo you want to me.
Talking about liberty and freedom is fun, but it's not free because money is time, right? Time is money, money is time, and we all have to deal with the finite nature of our existence. So that's the thing. We're devoting time to this. We're not devoting time to other things, right? Fundamental economic concept. So thank you very much for listening. Seeds of Liberty podcast, and have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye.
Thanks for listening, guys.